Hello friends and welcome to Edupedia World Videos. This is the course Basics of Programming in C language, and right now what we are doing is nested loops. So the best way to understand loops in C language or in any programming language is to try and print various patterns on screen using the loops. Okay, this will make your understanding of loops very clear. So here what we had done earlier was we had printed a right angled triangle like this one on the screen using loops. So here we used nested loops because we had to traverse in two dimensions. First is vertical and second one was horizontal. So our outer loop was used to traverse vertically from top to bottom, and the inner loop was used to traverse horizontally from left to right. Okay, so outer loop had condition that it would run for as many characters as the height of the triangle was. If the triangle was 10 characters high, then it will run for 10 times, and the horizontal loop would run from 0 to the number of characters at that particular line. So we used the variable, the outer loops counter, we used it as the limit for the inner loop. So outer loops counter at the second line would be 2. So this is what we use the limit to run our inner loop. So inner loop also printed only 2 characters. Similarly, at the third line, the outer loop's counter was 3 and inner loop ran from 0 to 3 minus 1. So it also printed 3 characters over here. Similarly, it continued to print out this right angled triangle. But we also discussed that we will be doing a non right angled triangle in our future programs. So this is a bit more complex because here your characters will not start at the first column. Okay, so you have to put an indent or a margin you have to give before the printing of the characters, and this margin you can see is printed using white spaces, blank spaces. Okay, another difference is that here in the right angled triangle we incremented the number of characters at every line by 1. Okay, first line had 1 character, second had 2, third has 3, and similarly by 1 we are incrementing the number of characters. But in a non-right angled triangle, what we are doing is we are incrementing the number of characters by 2 in every line. Okay, so the second line has 3 characters and not 2 characters, third line has 5 and not 4. Similarly, each line will have 2 additional characters. Why? We can see this figure to learn why. Because the number of characters are distributed equally and symmetrically towards the left and right of the central dividing line. Okay, so we have to increase 1 character to each side of this central dividing line. So that is why at every line we add 1 more character. Okay, so another thing that you have to remember is that the base or the last line of this triangle, this kind of a triangle, will have the characters which are equal to, if the base is say at the nth line, okay, if the height of this triangle is n, then the number of characters in the nth line would be equal to n into 2 minus 1. So suppose the height of this triangle is 5, as in this case you can see it has 1 2 3 4 5 lines, so 11 to 15. So its characters in its base would be 5 into 2, which is 10, minus 1, which is 9. So this should be 9 characters, and we can count it 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9. So 9 characters are there. So this is another point that we have to remember in its logic, and this is true for every line. Okay, for the fourth line we will have 4 multiplied by 2, which is 8, minus 1, which is 7 characters over here. So similarly we will have 5 over here and 3 over here and 1 over here. So that is what we have to remember. Now let us build up a logic for this. So first thing that we have to consider is that initially we use only 2 loops, one outer loop and one inner loop, but here we have to print these white spaces also, so we will have to use 3 loops. Now let us decide how to apply the conditions for this loop. Well, this loop we have already realized and discussed that at every line we will decrement the number of spaces by 1. So here if the number of spaces are 4, here there would be 3 spaces, then 2, and then 1, and then 0. So this is okay, but how to know that how many spaces to print at the first line? Okay, so how we will come to know that? We will learn this by our symmetry property. Okay, so our triangle is symmetrically distributed towards the left and right of a center line. So what we have to do is we have to first find out this center line. And how to find out that center line is, if the height of the triangle is 5, okay, the formula would be, to find out the center line, would be 5 minus 1. Okay, because the topmost line in that case will be displayed after 4 total characters. Okay, because this is 5 over here, 5 characters will form almost the half of the triangle. Okay, if the height of the triangle is 5 lines, then 5 character, the total will be 9 characters over here, and up till the half we will cover with 5 characters. Okay, and we have that many spaces before the first character. So 5 minus 1, because the first character will be printed at the 5th position. So if the height of the triangle is 5, the first character will be printed at the 5th position. So that is why we need 5 minus 1 spaces before it for the first line. Similarly for second line, this will be 5 minus 2, 5 minus 3, 5 minus 4, and 5 minus 5, so on. So that is again clear to us. So now let us implement the logic for this. Okay, so here is the code that I have already written for this, and I will explain it to you line by line. First thing is our main program that has come over here. Before the main, we have also included two header files, stdio.h and stdlib.h. Okay, stdio.h is for standard input and output statements like printf and scanf, and stdlib.h has some other statements like the exit function. So you can study more about these files in detail, and you will come to know which all functions are included in them. Okay, so int main, int is the default data type and compulsory, it is mandatory data type for a C program for the main function. Okay, so the main function has always to return an integer type of a variable. Okay, so here in the program now we have taken a limit, which is nothing but the height of the triangle. So this variable will depict the height of the triangle. We have initialized it to 10. Okay, we can change this value and see the effect on the program, and we will try and do that. Okay. Then we have taken a variable count 1 and count 2. So these will serve as the counters of the loop, inner loop and the outer loop. Again we have taken another variable which is count 3. So this variable will serve for determining the number of spaces that we have to print at every line. Okay, so here we begin our first loop, the outer loop, which is for vertical traversing, and we initialize it to 1 first of all. Okay, and then we set it equal to count 1 less than limit multiplied by 2. Okay, so limit multiplied by 2 means that if our limit is 10, then it would be less than 20. Why 20? Because at every line we will be incrementing this count 1 by 2, and we have to do 10 iterations. Okay, so 20 divided by 2 would be 10. So that is why we have multiplied our height by 2, so that we are able to complete 10 iterations with a gap of 2 in every iteration, and this should be less than equal to. So we are starting from 1 and we will end at equal to 20. Okay, so the first loop, first nested loop comes over here, and we have skipped the brackets for the loop block, and that you can do if your loop contains only one condition. So this loop will be valid, means the scope of this loop is only this particular condition. Okay, this condition will be repeated till the loop condition remains true. So this statement will be repeated till this condition remains true. And what the condition is, first we have initialized the count of the loop to 0, then we have the condition count2 should be less than count3. Count3 is what? It is the center line. Okay, the number of characters till the center line that we have calculated by subtracting 1 from our height. Okay, so now what we have done, we have incremented this count by 1 at every time. This counter is the only counter that we have to increment by 2 every time, but this counter, because we have to print spaces, so we have incremented it by 1 at every iteration. Okay, and it is less than count3. Count3 is the center line character. Okay, now third loop and the second inner loop, this is the second nested loop, begins over here, and here we have again taken the same loop variable count2. We can use this because these two loops are mutually exclusive, so they are not interlinked to each other. First will execute and complete its execution, then only second will execute, and we have initialized this count2 variable to 0 again, so it will have no impact. So that is why we have used this variable. But you have to remember that you cannot use the variable of the outer loop in an inner loop. Why? Because in the inner loop the value of this variable will get modified, so your outer loop will also get affected. But here, since both these loops are mutually exclusive, the effect will not be there. Okay, so now count2, we have compared it to be less than count1. Okay, this is count1. Count1 is the variable of the outer loop, so count2 should always be less than that, and count2 plus plus, which will increment the count2 by 1 every time. Then we have printed the character. Here we have printed a constant character star every time, so we are not taking any input from user in this program to keep it simple. After your second loop finishes, you have put the next line, new line character, which is the escape sequence \n. Okay, and then as we discussed that we have to decrement the number of spaces at every line, so we have decremented count3. So count3 contains the number of spaces, so after every line the number of spaces has to reduce by 1. So that is what we have implemented over here by decrementing count3 in every iteration of the outer loop. Okay, so this is finished over here. The outer loop is finished, and at the end we just return 0 and exit. So let us see how this program executes. First let us save it. Okay, and after saving it we will build it and execute it. So our triangle, as we discussed, got printed on the screen. Okay, so it will have 10 lines vertically, or you can say 10 rows. Okay, and the lowermost line will have 19 columns, because 10 multiplied by 2 minus 1, then that many columns it will be having. N multiplied by 2 minus 1, as we discussed in the beginning. So you can try and change the values of your height and your character also. So let us change the value of height, and let me add the character as the cap character, or the, let me try and run it. First save it and then build it, then we'll try and run this program. So again our triangle got printed, and it has 4 rows, and the fourth row has 4 multiplied by 2 minus 1, that is 7 characters. Okay, so now our logic is clear. You can go through this program time and again till you understand it, and you can straight away print more characters like this. We have printed a triangle over here, so what you can do is you can try and implement another logic and print an inverted triangle below it, so complete shape will be turned into a diamond shape. So for your next exercise, what you can do is you can try and print an inverted triangle just below it. So try and print this shape as an exercise for you, so that you can learn more about the loops. So this shape, if you try and print, just it will just be nothing but you will need another set of nested loops to perform this drawing, and you will just have to manipulate the logic a bit. So that is as an exercise for you, and you can also try to increase your imagination. Just look on the net for more examples of patterns and try and print those patterns using loops. So this will actually make your loops conceptually very clear in your mind, and whenever you will have to implement logic in C program professionally in your careers, when you join a company and you have to implement these logics, so loops form one of the most important parts. And if your loops are clear, so you can say that you can implement a lot of complex logics in your professional world also. So I hope you understood whatever we discussed in this video. Thanks for watching, and continue to watch the course Basics of Programming in C language.